So this is the fourth time I've started to record this video, and every time I've got to about 3 minutes in and just deleted it because it just seems it's so shocking, and it's just such a difficult thing to know how to sort of process in my brain and to know what to say. So at the time of making this video, and I'm sat on a stall here today with a nice cup of tea. I've got a mug here that my friend Farah gave me. It says "Not Today Patriarchy," and it's got a cat on. Because normally I stand to make my videos, but I don't want my legs to ache today, so I'm going to sit and have a nice chat with you all. At the time of making this video, I am about 19 subscribers away from hitting 100k. And although it's been approaching all week, it hasn't seemed real. It hasn't seemed like it would actually get here. Now, on not even a bad day, but on a bad day, shall we say, I get 60 or 70 subscribers on YouTube. And on a good day, I might get 200 or 300. That happens a lot less often, but I get enough subscribers daily to know that by the time I've finished editing this video, probably actually by the time I've finished filming this video, especially if I keep deleting it, I will have 100k subscribers. So wanted to not only take the opportunity to thank you all, but I want to do something a little bit fun today. So first of all, I want to say a huge thank you to all of you who support me here on YouTube, and also who buy my courses, join my Facebook group, all of that other stuff that I do online, all of my online business. Because as many of you know, before the pandemic, I was actually teaching real world classes. I had years of experience teaching real world classes. I actually had quite a long career in the art industry, sort of self-built career, shall we say. I used to throw myself into all sorts of things, so as well as exhibiting and selling work. I used to run art exhibitions, curate art exhibitions. I used to give lectures. I used to teach art business. I used to do demonstrations for art clubs and in, these big shops that sell art materials. I had this whole career going on. And of course, when the pandemic hit, it all died, and it happened at a time in my personal life when I also needed to put a roof over my head. So it was a really tricky time for me. And by following me on YouTube and by subscribing and by watching the videos, you have actually helped to put a roof over my head. You actually helped me to pay my rent. Now, of course, I get income from YouTube in terms of ad revenue. It's not currently my biggest source of income. That would be selling online courses, but it kind of is starting to vie for attention, actually. And I've had 1 or 2 very good months on YouTube when the income from YouTube has actually outstripped the income from online courses. It really depends. If I'm launching an online course, a new one, then that may outstrip the YouTube income. But of course, YouTube has been a big driver in selling my online courses and for me to connect with new customers. So I am so grateful to all of you. You have literally changed my life. And even though things have opened up again now in the real world, it takes years to build up real life classes. It's just not possible for me to sort of drop back into that old life that I had. Nor actually do I want to, because I'm really quite happy making videos. So I thought we'd do something a bit fun today. Now there's one of the people, I watch a huge amount of YouTube, I really do. One of the people that I follow, every time he gets to a big subscriber milestone, he does something like, my 10 favourite movies or my 10 favourite songs. He just does something that enables his audience to get to know him a little bit better. So I'm going to do that today. So there's no art going on here. So if you're already bored, then just off you go, and I'll see you in the next art video. Going to be lots of art videos coming up next year. But what I thought we'd do today is I'm going to tell you about some channels that I would make on YouTube if I wasn't doing this one. So, what would I be doing on YouTube if I didn't do this channel? Because there is, I wouldn't call it a formula, but there is a way of understanding how YouTube works that means that once you've had one successful channel, you could easily make another. I say easily, I haven't got time, but I'm saying that you could do it potentially. And I have seen people do it as well, because that initial stage is the hardest bit when you're building up that audience. If you've already got a large audience and you start a new channel, then, you're going to have 1,000 or 2,000 subscribers just to start off with. So everything does become much easier. The channel that I run at the moment is what YouTube categorize as a how-to channel. And these are the easiest channels to get started on because, of course, people are always searching. The other day, I was searching for information about my boiler and my heating system. And where did I go? I went to YouTube to watch a video. So a how-to channel is the easiest one to get started with, rather than something that relies on personality, shall we say, because you could be doing some kind of vlog, and really, if nobody knows you, then who's interested? But once you've actually got a following, it becomes a little easier. And it often amuses me to think of other YouTube channels that I would like to make. So I'm going to go through 10 today. Now, the purpose of this is not to say say that I'm going to make any of these channels. I am absolutely not going to make another YouTube channel, certainly not for the foreseeable future. But I'd be very interested to hear what you think about these ideas. So the idea of this is just so that you get to know me as a person a little bit better. So let's jump into the 10 YouTube channels that I would create if I wasn't doing this art channel. So the first channel that I would create, that I almost did create actually, was an art business channel. And you'll see that on this channel there are some business videos that I did and some videos on social media and things like that. And I had this idea that I would do art business videos, but it soon became apparent looking at the statistics that it is a very, very tiny proportion of my audience. I mean, 10%, maybe even 5% or less that actually want to be professional artists. And I hope that when you come to my channel, you get some help from me. And I'm always happy to answer your questions. But nevertheless, it was clear that this would never work as a strategy. And for myself now, being 2 years out of the constant exhibiting and running exhibitions and all of this, you know, your knowledge does go out of date. And so I don't feel I'm as up to date with that stuff as I used to be. And frankly, even when it comes to selling artwork, I simply don't have time to drag it around galleries anymore. I just sell it online. Most of my art ends up in America. Many of my YouTube audience are in America too. In fact, the largest proportion of you are over in America. And that's another difficulty for me because things like the rules of exhibiting, how you frame paintings, these do tend to change a little bit for different countries. And so whilst I am always very enthusiastic about art business, I've always considered myself to be a businesswoman. It's always what I've considered to be one of my strong points when it comes to working in the art world, is a strong sort of business instinct. I do understand now that running an art business channel wouldn't work for me. So the next YouTube channel that I would run if I wasn't running this one, I'm just laughing at the thought of it because this is going to surprise a lot of you. And I would run a channel about American politics. Now you might look at me and think, what on earth do you know about American politics? You would be shocked to understand that it's actually been a 20, possibly more than 20-year obsession of mine, and I can't even explain why. I know when it happened, I know when I became obsessed with American politics, and that was when I wandered into a second-hand shop. Years ago, I used to read lots of books, and it was much cheaper for me to get them second-hand, so I wandered into a second-hand shop, and I found a book called Primary Colours. Now, at the time, this was an anonymous book, and it claimed that nothing that was in the book was anything related to, anything in real life. But it was quite clear that this was just for the author to cover themselves legally. It was quite clear to everybody as soon as it came out that it was written by a staffer on the Clinton campaign when he was campaigning to be president. And it was all of this insight into President Clinton before he became president. I was absolutely fascinated by it. I was fascinated by the whole world of politics, and I was fascinated by Clinton himself because he was a very flawed character. So on the one hand, he seemed to be very kind and he was very charismatic, incredibly charismatic actually, and he managed to do a lot of good things very successfully. On the other hand, his morals were very, very sketchy. There was some shocking stuff in the book, which I shan't repeat here on YouTube. But he had difficulty, as we say in the UK, of keeping it in his trousers. And once I read this book about Clinton, I just was hooked on the whole landscape of American politics. I've always been one of these people in the UK that will stay up all night, watching election results come in, things that other people find incredibly boring. I find incredibly interesting. And as the years went on, I became less interested in politics in the UK, particularly in recent years after Brexit. Our politics, when you consider our place in the world, are quite irrelevant compared to large countries like America and China and Russia. And so I find myself in the situation where I could tell you about the judges on the Supreme Court in America, all of their backstory, all of their political leanings. I could tell you all of this stuff. And on a day-to-day basis, I can barely remember who is Prime Minister in the UK. So I would love to do a channel all about American politics. I keep the subject very much off of my social media because I do realise that with the majority of my audience being in America, it's going to be very polarising, and you don't need to know my personal politics or my personal viewpoints because you come to me to learn art, and you are welcome to learn art with me no matter what your political leanings are. And I have always considered myself somewhat of a centrist, possibly slightly left-leaning, but generally a centrist. And it horrifies me actually how polarised politics has become both in America and in the UK. And one thing that I think would actually make politics much better all around the world would be if we were to take money out of it. It is quite shocking to me the fact that the thing that seems to get people elected at the end of the day is money, and that's not how it should be. Now, I couldn't actually run a channel about American politics because firstly, I would probably need to live in America. It's bad enough being addicted to this stuff and staying up to watch my favourite YouTubers talking about it, and they're all streaming at 2 a.m. and I'm already an insomniac. But politics changes on an hourly basis, a daily basis, and to have a successful channel like that, you have to completely immerse yourself in it. You have to be available every single day for it because stuff just changes too quickly. I certainly couldn't run it as a second channel, and I probably would need to, as I said, live in America. But channel number 2 for me would be American politics. So the third channel that I would run if I wasn't running this one would be a channel, it's going to make me laugh, this whole thing, would be a channel for women over 50. I myself am 55. And I'm always very interested, when you get these videos come up and say things women over 50 shouldn't wear or exercises for women over 50, all of this stuff. I mean, I end up hate watching some channels, and I don't like that expression, hate watching, but it's when you watch a channel really because it amuses you rather than you believe in the content. And the problem is, because of YouTube's algorithm, the more of this stuff you watch, the more is presented to you. And some of these ladies, I mean, there are absolutely lovely, well-meaning ladies telling us the things that we should be doing and shouldn't be doing age 50 and older is just hilarious. Some of the fashions are so unbearably frumpy. It really, really does make me laugh. I would also include fitness content because that's the sort of thing that I'm always watching. And as I said, some fashion, some beauty stuff. Now, I do actually have some qualification for talking about this stuff. When I was in my early 20s, I qualified as a full-time hairdresser. I didn't do it for very long, but I qualified as a hairdresser and indeed a manicurist. And I actually have quite a large knowledge about health and fitness. Now, one thing that you may not know about me is that I regularly do martial arts. I've been doing martial arts for 10 years because when you're 45, Kung Fu is a great thing to take up. So I took up Kung Fu when I was 45, been doing it for 10 years now. And I've actually got to the point where I'm training to be a junior instructor in martial arts. I'm not sure the channel for women over 50 would be a good idea. There might be some sort of bolshy feminist ranting on it. There would certainly be some inappropriate behaviour and inappropriate clothing. I think we could call the channel, let's call it Don't Tell Me I Can't Wear Lycra. Enough said about that one. I don't think I'll inflict my channel for women over 50 on the world. So the next channel I would make if I wasn't doing this one, I think I'd do a true crime channel. I love true crime channels. I tend to listen to them more than I watch them. So some of them actually don't have somebody talking to camera like me. They sort of just have a few pictures come up and they just tell a story. I also listen to a lot of podcasts. I never have time for TV, but I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts, cold cases, things like that. And when I was younger, when I was really young, sort of 14, I remember once I thought to myself, I'd love to be a singer. I was very much interested in Annie Lennox at the time and the fact that she'd been an opera singer. And I just imagined myself being a singer and a diva, and I would love that lifestyle. So I recorded my voice. I recorded myself singing something. And it was at that time that I realised that I have a singing voice that sounds like a cat being ironed. I am beyond tone deaf. I am so tone deaf. I simply cannot sing. And all of my ideas at the time, my teenage ideas of being a singer or indeed being a radio DJ, they all went out the window as I realised that I had the most horrible voice. But as I've got older, actually, I don't hate my voice anymore. Obviously, I still can't sing, but I think my speaking voice is okay. So I grew up in London. Okay, there's a tiny random fly, that's weird. I grew up in London and I had a very rough accent. I had a very working class upbringing. And as I got older, I didn't try to speak differently or have some kind of affectation. But I did understand that in order to get jobs and things, I needed to speak a little bit better. And so I got into the habit of pronouncing my words more clearly. And as I grew older, I lived in areas that were a little bit nicer and my accent changed. So although I don't put my accent on, there are times when I amuse my friends, particularly if I'm sort of shouting instructions at Kung Fu, and I do tend to go into this kind of London accent a little bit. But overall, I don't hate my voice anymore, and I do think that I might be quite good at storytelling, so I like the idea of doing true crime stories. Again, this is one that I don't think would be practical for me because I know that those channels, the successful ones, they do a huge amount of research. Sometimes you hear the same story because they're often very famous cases. You hear the same story across multiple channels and multiple podcasts, and they all put a different spin on it. I don't even mind listening to a story that I know because I just find them so interesting. I find crime interesting and I find criminals interesting. Now, whilst it could be a channel where I don't speak to camera, it could also be a channel where I sort of sat in an armchair in a sort of a library, I think, with a fire blazing and did it almost in a sort of a gothic manner. That quite appeals to me as well. So that would be my next channel, would be a true crime stories channel. So the fifth channel that I would do if I wasn't doing this one would be a sewing channel. It's my hobby. I had taught myself to sew when I was about 18. I had a long break from it actually when I was working full-time teaching classes and things. I really got out of the habit of it. I felt that my skill levels dropped. It just wasn't as good anymore, and I went many years without sewing. Now in the last couple of years I've gone back to it. So I made this I don't know, I made this dress that I'm wearing. It's just, it's just a dress. But anyway, my skills have sort of come back a bit, and I am really into sewing. And it's the thing that, whilst you are all coming to YouTube for relaxation and to learn art, for me, it's my job. And it's always difficult when you do something for your job to actually want to then do that as your spare time hobby. So I still love painting, and I certainly love teaching painting. There's a dog barking. I hope you can't hear that too much. But for me, painting no longer has that sort of total idea of relaxation. It hasn't done really since I started my career as a professional artist. To me, painting is work. Yes, I do enjoy it, but it's still work. So you'll find me on a Saturday listening to my true crime podcasts and sewing. Now, if I did a sewing channel, I think it would be one of these ones where I just sort of reviewed patterns and reviewed things that I had made, rather than a tutorial sewing channel where I sort of went through the actual filming of, a step-by-step sewing process. Because although I have quite a lot of knowledge about this, certainly enough to make a sewing channel, I do understand from doing art tutorials just how much work that sort of content is. But the idea of making a sewing channel with some lightweight content, that really, really appeals to me. I probably wouldn't do it because, of course, then my remaining hobby would have become work. So the next channel I would make if I wasn't doing this channel would be a cooking channel, and it would be a very specific cooking channel. So it would be a vegan cooking channel. Yes, I am one of those freaky vegan people. So I went vegetarian when I was 22, and then I went vegan 9 years. I don't know, I never noticed this stuff, maybe 8 or 9 years ago. And of course, it's become fairly fashionable in recent times. But for me, it was just a feeling that I couldn't kill an animal, and I have a revulsion of meat. I won't even eat fake meats. I don't like the look of them. I just like vegetables and tofu mostly. In fact, I could do a cooking channel that was entirely about tofu. Some of you are watching this and saying, oh, tofu, it's disgusting stuff. It's squishy and it's tasteless. That's because you don't know how to cook it properly. So my channel would teach you how to cook tofu properly. But actually, that's not the cooking channel that I would do. I would probably do a channel about bulk cooking vegan food. Now, I'm not talking about meal prep where people prep their meals for the week and, put them in little boxes and eat them all week. The idea of eating the same meal all week, I really couldn't do that. I do have a lot of recipes. I'm very good at making things in bulk. Vegan food can be quite time consuming to prep because of all the chopping involved, all the vegetables, especially when you won't eat fake meats like me. But I'm very good at making freezer food. And I've just got some really interesting recipes, sort of dried things that you can mix up when you get back from late night kung fu training. And I've got loads and loads of freezer recipes. And so my next channel would be all about vegan cooking and how to prep it in advance so that you've always got delicious plant-based foods. It would be a channel that is welcoming to meat eaters too, because more of us need to eat more plants, both for health and for the environment. And I am really not one of these angry people that spends all their time ranting on social media. I think it's much nicer to convert people with a nice slice of my lemon and poppy seed vegan cake. And that's one of the recipes that would probably be on my vegan cooking channel. Now, continuing my obsession with American culture, I think my next channel would be one of these fun channels that just compares American and UK life. Now, to be clear, I've never visited America, but I do know a lot about American language because I do try and tailor my content for Americans simply because the majority of my channel viewers are people in America. That's not to say that they're even 50% because there are lots and lots of people from all over the world that watch me here on YouTube. There's a channel that I watch, I think it's called, is it Over the Pond or Across the Pond? And it's literally this guy is English guy who's gone to live in America, and he sort of talks about the differences in culture. And this is something that's always fascinated me. Language has always fascinated me. A lot of people in the UK will complain that we're just being influenced by America, but I don't think they've realised sometimes that it goes both ways. So let's talk about a word that I have noticed the language has changed and the Americans are now using it the way the English are using it. Now, I'm going to spell a couple of these words because they're slightly risque words and I don't want the YouTube algorithm picking them up. So the first word I'm going to spell for you is P-I-S-S-E-D. Now, I first came across Americans using this in, I think it was Ghostbusters. And the geeky guy in there, I've forgotten his name temporarily, Rick Moranis, is that it? The ghosts were destroying the building and he said the superintendent is going to be blank. And I thought to myself, drunk. The superintendent's going to get drunk, because that word in the UK, if you use it in that situation, it means drunk. We also use it as an insult, so PISS, off, just means get lost basically. But where the word in the UK means drunk, the word in America meant angry. Now, I have noticed in recent years that this word has become sort of dual meaning, and now the English are using the American term for it, and the Americans are using the English term for it. So this is a case where language is kind of swapping over. And this would be what my channel would be about, and all sorts of cultural things as well. I'm going to give you one last tip on this. So this is another word that I'm going to spell out for you. And I want you never to use this word to English people or if you're in England. And the word is FANNY. Now in America this means your backside, but in the UK, here in the UK, this word means a lady's front bottom parts, shall we say. So when I was watching a video the other day and I heard a lady say, I need to lose some weight from my blank, I was rather shocked. I thought to myself, that's very specific, and is that a place you actually want to lose weight from? I'm not so certain. So whenever we hear this word in American videos, we're just absolutely in hysterics because it's a very, very rude word in the UK. And my channel would be a humorous look at the difference between the cultures of the UK and America. The next channel that I would make would be a channel about minimalism and household organisation. I'm one of these really, really annoyingly neat people. You know when you go around someone's house and you just walk in and it's all neat and spotless? I mean, I'm not saying my house is always like that, but I am approaching that point now. I am very obsessive about keeping my house clean and tidy, and I've become increasingly interested in minimalism and essentialism. I'm not actually yet a minimalist, but I do think about being a minimalist a lot. And that's almost as good. I think that's almost as good as actually decluttering, getting the stuff out of my house. One of the things I'm aiming to do in 2023 is actually to sort of pare things down. I've got a lot of stuff in my house left over from the days when I ran huge exhibitions. You know those art browser things, the wooden racks that you keep prints in? I've got about 5 of them. I don't need any. And yet it was such a big part of my life. There's an emotional side, isn't there, to letting things go. But for me, I really, really feel stressed if things are messy. I think an awful lot of people, I've got friends that get completely overwhelmed by the idea of cleaning and doing housework, and it can be like so overwhelming if you don't break it down into smaller tasks. I think I'd be really good at helping people with this. So my next channel would be all about minimalism and about how to make your house clean and peaceful and beautiful. The next channel I would run, of course, would be a cat channel. Now, the difficulty with doing this at the moment is I don't actually have a cat living with me, despite the fact that my channel is very heavily cat approved. Now, I do own a cat. I own a cat with my ex-partner Marvin. Now, he lives 10 minutes down the road and we're still very, very good friends. There's no animosity between us whatsoever, and we jointly own our cat. But when we split, we had to consider where the cat would live. And Marvin had retired recently, and the cat had become very, very bonded with him. They had a real bonded relationship, mostly because I was always in and out, whereas the cat could sit on Marvin's lap and I never sit still for 5 minutes. But I also had to consider the fact that when you rent a house like I have done here, usually in the UK, the landlords do not allow pets, which is very, very sad, and I find it very, very difficult. Now, there are ways around it, and I could possibly persuade them. The landlords are quite nice people, but I also have to consider that although I'm in a village, I'm very, very close to a main road. Now, there are indoor cats, but here in the UK, it's actually, especially in rural England, it's very, very safe for cats to go outdoors. They don't really have any predators. There are foxes, but unless a cat is incredibly elderly or sick, it's unlikely to be taken by a fox. There was actually very famous footage recently of the Downing Street cat, of the Prime Minister's cat, chasing a fox away. And my cats have always gone out. Now, I don't judge anybody that keeps their cats indoors, because there are certain parts of the world and even certain parts of England where you would need to do that. But I love the idea of a cat being able to go out. I don't even have any closed gardens here. So I've got almost like 2 front gardens. There's no closed in garden. There's no fence. So even if I thought, well, the cat will just go in the garden, I'd enclose it so the cat couldn't get out of the garden and couldn't get near the main road. That's actually not possible here. And so whilst I have my beautiful black cat Gimmet, who I go and visit at least once a week, I don't have any cats living with me. Now, when I can afford to buy a house, I am determined that I am going to adopt 2 cats. Now, although I don't think that I would be particularly talented at making cat-based content, I'm pretty confident that people will watch anything whatsoever with cats in. And I know this because I will watch anything whatsoever with cats in. I think a cat channel is a really low bar to reach. I think all cats are absolutely fascinating. So my next channel, I think, would be a cat channel. So the last channel that I think I would make would be a kind of meditation, motivation, mindfulness channel. motivational content, and also some relaxation stuff. As I've discussed, I no longer hate my voice. I think it's okay. I quite often listen to these sort of meditation videos as I go to sleep. Again, because I've done Kung Fu for years, I've also been doing Tai Chi, so I do know quite a lot about meditation and breathing methods and things like that. I've also found that the more motivational content I've done on this channel, and sometimes I make a video where I just talk about the processes of art, and I'm always surprised actually how much you like this content, where I'm not actually painting at all. I'm just talking about motivations and processes for making art. And so I think a channel that would be a really nice thing to make would be a motivation and mindfulness channel with perhaps some guided meditations and breathing exercises. So there we are, that's 10 channels that I would make if I were not doing this one. If you've stayed this long, thank you so much for watching me just waffle on about absolute nonsense. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to make any of those channels. I absolutely don't have time to make any of them, but it'd be really interesting to hear your thoughts. So 100,000 subscribers, 100,000 subscribers. We'll keep going for a little bit longer, shall we, and see where we get. Thank you all so much for your support. I love you all very much, and I'll see you very soon in a proper art video.